Hello guys, this is a review of the movie Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko is one of my favorite movies ever, so I'm really excited that I get a chance to review it now. If you hear the dogs bark as usual, we're just gonna ignore them because they're gonna do their own thing and I have no control over them. And I don't want to end up having a mental breakdown, not unlike the one that the main character has in this movie. So I'm gonna start with the plot first, and then I'll get into the little details, some notes that I have here in my opinion about the film. The movie follows the story of a teenager named Donnie Darko. Donnie, I believe, is a nickname short for Donald, but don't quote me on that. Donnie Darko is just like every other teenager, well, except for the fact that he's above average intellectually speaking, and he also carries a burden of some mental health issues. The movie starts with him waking up in random places, and that is not explained to us. This is a very trippy movie, so you're gonna have to hang in there with me. He lives with his mom, his dad. He has a younger sister and another older sister, and they have like a very normal family dynamic. He's coping with, like I said, the mental health issue. He doesn't want to take his medicine, and he's kind of ah dealing with that. Teenage angst, as we could just call it. But beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and, in my opinion, he's suffering from like an existential crisis. I think he's trying to find meaning in the world, more meaning than there actually is. And he's having a lot of like doubts about God and what it means to be alive and just all of that mumbo jumbo. In their town lives an old lady that every day she goes to check the mail, and she checks it over and over and over, and nobody really knows why. I'm kind of being distracted by the barking, but I hope it's not too loud on the mic. So keep that in mind. This old lady, they call her the grandma death. That's what the kids call her because she's very old. She's like 90 something, or yeah. And keep that in mind. Like I said, everything starts going a little more into the horror route once we are introduced to Frank. Frank is this demonic rabbit looking guy. It's actually a costume, and later we get to see the real face. But at first, this Frank guy, right, this huge creepy bunny, is talking to Donnie, and we as audience members could interpret it as a hallucination since he's taking medication and he's presenting a lot of schizophrenic symptoms. And the doctor herself has said something along those lines of him, having to build up, and I quote here, the doctor believed that his detachment from reality stemmed from his inability to cope with the forces in the world that he perceives to be threatening. That's a direct quote from the movie. But as the movie goes on, then we find out that there's more to it, because I forgot to mention the most important part is that one of those mornings that he woke up in, I think, his father's friend's lawn at a golf course or something like that, an engine from an airplane fell right into his room and like shook obviously the whole house. He could have and should have died there and then, but he didn't because he was elsewhere. Thanks to Frank, who woke him up and told him, hey, follow me, this and that. He tells him near the very beginning of the movie that the world has 28 more days and certain hours and seconds, and he obviously is taken aback by that. I think all of us are, even us watching the movies, like, what is going on? And as the movie progresses, Frank orders that he floods the school, that he sets this guy's house on fire. And I'm not doing the movie justice as usual, because me just telling you what happens in the movie, what the movie's about, it doesn't do it justice. It just can't. You have to watch it. It's a lot better than it is. So I should probably just go straight into my opinion. Let me just summarize the rest of the plot. So some time passes and he starts to believe that Frank, has awarded him with the ability to time travel and like know about time travel and also see what's going to happen in the future, because these bubble looking things burst out of people's chest, and he gets to see where people are going. And then he has like a conversation with the teacher from school about that, which is also very interesting. But the whole point of all of this is that they end up having a Halloween party, him and his older sister, while his mom is away at a dance competition with his younger sister. And you see his sister asking, "Oh, where's Frank? Oh, he went to get the beers and whatnot." And he decides that he's gonna go with his girlfriend and his friends to Grandma Death's house. And there, some bullies are trying to steal, ostensibly some gems, is what it's uh, inferred because of prior context clues that we see in the movie. But that's not the point. The point is that these guys are like wanting to kill them or like beat them up, and some guy runs over Donnie's girlfriend, and then everybody just gets out of there as quickly as possible. And when Donnie realizes that his girlfriend is not responding, we don't know for certain if she is dead, but it's assumed that she is. So at least by Donnie, so he gets his gun and shoots a guy in the eye, and obviously he dies. And that guy was Frank. So the bunny came back in time. The bunny. So Frank came back in time using that time traveling ability of his to warn him. He basically, tells him that in order for the world to keep moving, for the world not to come to an end, I guess he has to sacrifice himself. He gives him a little peek of what life would have been like if he didn't die by the airplane's engine. And that's how the movie ends. The movie ends with him dying. So he never meets his girlfriend. His girlfriend is new. She has her own troubles, and obviously his family is devastated. But we as the audience know that it's for the greater good. Now let's jump into some of the details that I have here, because the movie, like I said, I make it sound boring. It's not boring at all. Beth Grant, the actress, actually the one that plays Miss Farmer in this movie, plays Miss Kettlewell in Child's Play 2. If you've seen Child's Play 2, like I'm reviewing those movies as well from the Chucky series, so that's how I was like, oh, isn't it? Like, it's kind of weird to see her as a teacher in both films, having very similar attitudes. Um, what's her name? Drew Barrymore plays a teacher in this, and she actually, a line that stood out to me when she said, "Sit next to the boy you think is the cutest." So Donnie's future girlfriend walks in and she's like, "Where do I sit? They told me to come to this English class." And that's what Drew Barrymore's character says to her, which is kind of like, it doesn't really happen in real life, but she's a very committed teacher. Kudos to her for being the way she is. Um, there's a very funny scene. This is not important, these notes, but I was just writing them down because it's kind of funny. There's a scene where they flood the school, right? And one of the girls is like, oh, they were saying that there was like feces everywhere, and a girl asks, "What is feces?" "Oh, it's baby mice." So they had like their little dumb mean girls moment, I guess. um the scene where Donnie is being hypnotized by his psychiatrist and he just keeps talking about sex over and over is so relatable, I guess. Like, that's what I like about this film, that it does have this um beyond earth, or however you want to call it, experience, right? Out of body experience. It has a lot of paranormal things going on, a lot of things that make you question reality, but it's not like unbelievable. The acting was obviously amazing, and they wrote it in a way that you could identify with the characters. You could be like, that, yeah, that's me. Oh, I had that same scenario or similar scenario. And if we really, I would say, dive into the whole why are we here, question, and what are we doing, and does this mean anything, that I guess if we think about it far enough, we could all end up having, a little breakdown. because it's something that I don't think anyone has the answer for. Myself, this is my personal opinion, I don't think that as humans we are knowledgeable enough to understand what happens in the afterlife, or to really understand, like, really the purpose of us being here, aside from just enjoying the roller coaster that it is, with all the emotions and everything that we have to taste, to see. But if you want to like give it a straight up answer of this is what it is, then yeah, I don't think that any of us are capable of doing that. So I really appreciate that beyond all of this, or aside from all of this, they also gave us a regular drama that we could all relate to. Gosh, these dogs are so freaking annoying. The guy's being rude to this girl, I think her name is Charita. um I think it's so important that they show these scenes because, like I said, it makes it that much more relatable. It doesn't just give us your regular 80s, I'm the bully and I'm gonna say mean things to you and I'm gonna make you cry, and that's what the whole movie's gonna be about. That's not what this movie's about. But I think, this is on my opinion, obviously, they make a point to bring Charita out and see the pain in her existence. There's another scene, and when people bully her, all she has to say to them is "shut up," um, which is kind of funny, but it's messed up. Like the way the poking that gets her to say that. Later on in the film, she has a presentation, um, and she obviously doesn't even like get recognized. People are like, "Get off stage, Charita," but she does this beautiful ballet style dance, but it's not really ballet. It's kind of like a modern interpretation of music, like however your body feels it, and it has like the theatrical aspect with the little swans and the little decorations. It's very hard to explain. Just basically a piece of art. It's very beautiful, and people even bully her there and then. So she gets out and is crying outside of the school, and to me that shows the desperation. It shows the ugly side of living. Like I said, is just really not the why are we here, but really why are we here, with that heat inside of your body, that you're like, I just want to get rid of this. Like, what's going on? Why should I be here? And she obviously, um she, I think, turns to food and overeating for comfort. That's something that we also see when the Drew Barrymore's character, the teacher, she gets fired for being progressive and being real with the kids and showing them things that are controversial in the eyes of other people. She gets out after she's fired, and she just screams, ah, she yells a curse word, and she looks over and Charita's just right there sneaking some food in. And I so beautiful, so like well done, because that's basically what I think Charita was feeling up to that moment. And there's another scene before I finish my thoughts on her, where it's, I would say, near the end of the movie, not like all the way like the last scene, but towards the end, where Donnie goes over to Charita and she's like, a little bit taken aback, like what is going on, and he puts his hand, if I remember correctly, on her head, and he's like, I'm paraphrasing, things are gonna get better, I promise. And you think that they're gonna have like this very intimate moment where they hug, and she's very appreciative, and she just yells, shut up. She runs the other way. So that's like super funny, but it's a very heartfelt scene. And that's, like I said, when you're able to mix in the pain of living, of existing, with the humor and the ridiculousness of it all, I think that's genius. So they did a very good job with that. Gosh, these dogs, I swear. What's the point of living if you don't have a dick? Straight quote from Donnie Darko when they're talking about the Smurfs. I don't know why I wrote it down. I think it's just because I agree with it. Obviously, not everybody has a penis, but it's like ever since you're a little kid, at least for me, you're taught that I should just talk about myself. I was taught that you have to grow up, you have to go to school, you have to get a good job, you have to marry a girl, and you have to have kids, and then they kind of stop there. That's life for the very one-dimensional people that inhabit this earth. And it's just a whole bunch of brainwashing through years and years and years. So but at the same time, if we think about it, we're like, well, then yeah, I guess, like, if we were to seize the whole act of sex to make babies, then there wouldn't be any more human life because we need it. So at the same time, I do understand, like, if you don't have one, then, but I don't know if he was referring a little more about the pleasure of having one and what you could do with it, or the service that it provides, rather than what you could create with it. But I just agreed with that line. Um, so Frank asked Donnie about time travel, and Grandma Death wrote a book about it. This in the movie, I'm glad that we had that dialogue between Donnie and the psychiatrist, because then it would have been very hard to follow because of so many things going on. But Donnie explains, like, okay, so Frank the rabbit asked me about time travel, and is it like such a big coincidence that Grandma Death wrote a book about it? Like, he later found out through the teacher. So he feels in his bones that there has to be a relationship between the two. And that's when I think all the pieces fit together for well, not all the pieces, but a lot of the pieces in this huge puzzle start coming together nicely, and we start to feel like, so this crazy lady might not be crazy. And it leans towards a whole idea, something that I hear often when talking about this. Well, I remember having a conversation with my sister many, many years ago, and she was like, can you imagine if people suffering from, let's say, schizophrenia, people that hallucinate, what if they were actually seeing the real world and we are not, because we have this deficiency that narrows our possibilities to just, like, physical material things and what we could see as, physical matter. But these people have this ability, this gift to see beyond and see maybe dead people and stuff like that. And it goes to leans towards the saying, what if we're the crazy people and they're the sane ones? When we talk about people who are mentally unstable enough to have to be taken to, like, a psychiatric hospital and stuff like that. It's very interesting. And that's what we start seeing with Grandma Death, that maybe she's not as crazy as she seemed. At least for me, that's what I got. I was like, there has to be a connection between all of them. She's not just going for the mill because she has amnesia. Um, Next, I put, every living creature on Earth dies alone. So this is something that Grandma Death whispered to Donnie, and I think it really rocked his world. Um, it's something that, as he mentions, he had what was it, a dog? I think it was a dog, or maybe a cat, that went underneath the front porch to die alone. And when you think about it, lots of animals do this. They don't just stay there and be like, hey, I'm dying. They kind of like go into a corner. They want to, for some reason, just go out on their own. And it's something that I kind of, as humans, us being such social creatures for the most part, we want to be around people when times are good, and when we're struggling with an illness. For example, I just had COVID, and I could tell you, well, it wasn't really as, I wouldn't say it was as bad as some other people, but my point is that most people want to be cared for, want, like, oh, bring me some hot tea please, and like care for me and make sure that I know that you're there, and no matter how sick I get. And for me, it's quite the opposite. I would much rather I prefer prefer people to back away, give me space, give me time to heal, give me time to, to get back in shape. And like while I was presenting these symptoms from COVID, I just felt like, okay, like this isn't terrible, this is uncomfortable, but not being able to breathe also brings in, because I had almost all the symptoms, brings in a sense of panic. Like, will I wake up if I do manage to fall asleep? Because it's hard to fall asleep, as you would imagine. But like I said, I would much rather just experience it on my own. And if I have to go, then I want to go out on my own as well. I don't want people around me looking at how I'm dying. That's crazy, because you come to this life alone. And I think there's a certain beauty to just going out on your own as well. But for the most part, I would say that people do want, like I said, to like have people around you. And something that Donnie mentions, and I had to paraphrase because I don't remember word for word, but he said like, I don't want to be alone, or so I don't want to die alone, something like that, which is very sad, as because we know what happens in the end. Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen plays one of the bullies. When there are like two main bullies, and that's so freaking weird for me. The first time I watched this film, I would say 7 or 8 years ago, for the first time ever. And I mean, maybe when I was a little kid, I watched it, but I don't remember. So the first time I made it a point, I was like, I'm gonna order it. I ordered it online. That's why I have like this copy and not like a very fancy collector's edition or whatever. Um, I, what was I saying? These dogs keep like, anyway, yeah, it was so bizarre to see Seth Rogen in those movies. I didn't even recognize him. That's what I was trying to say. I didn't recognize him back in the year that I watched it for the first time, because this is one of my favorite movies ever, but it's not a very light movie to digest. So I'm not like, I don't want to like oversaturate in the film, because it's when I don't know, like sometimes you could watch a film over and over and over, it doesn't matter, you'll still enjoy it. And it's true for me, but it does take some things away if you watch way too much. So this one, I think I've watched it enough times, and especially I rewatched it recently so that I could talk about it. And I noticed that Seth Rogen was there, and I was like, that's crazy. The theater scene. The theater scene, I think, is one of the most popular scenes in the entire movie. I know so from the amount of views that the YouTube videos got. After watching this film, I was like, near the end, I was inspired to write a song, and I was like, ooh, so I was just da, 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 in my head. And then I forgot, unfortunately, because then Mad World, that song came up in the end, and I was singing to that song, which is an amazing song, an amazing contribution to the film. But back to what I was saying about the theater scene. Oh yeah, then I looked up like YouTube videos so that I could get back in the groove of being inspired to write something, but it didn't really work out. But as I was gonna say, the theater scene is so incredible. It's kind of, I guess that's one of the scenes where the horror element, because when I bought this, well, I will talk about it. I know I overlap thoughts so much, and then I don't get my point across in the end. So let's just keep talking about this. It invites a lot of like horror into the movie through this scene. You, for the first time, I should say, get to see the real face behind the Frank's costume. And the infamous line, "Why are you wearing that stupid bunny suit?" or something like that. And he's like, "Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?" Doesn't that hit home? I think it hits home for everybody. Yeah, I'm sure it did for me. And then Frank opens a portal, and it's just so crazy because the girlfriend is like passed out. She's sleeping, and he talks to him in such a friendly yet like, I don't know, it's unnerving. I would say that that's the right word. Another scene that I really like is when Donnie is talking to his mother, and he asks her, "What is it like having a wacko for a son?" And she says something along the lines of, "It's marvelous," or like, "It's wonderful," something like that. And that scene in particular reminds me of a scene from Closet Monster. So I really, really connect with scenes like that of like not living up to your parents' expectations and kind of asking the direct question of what is it like having blank as a son, as opposed to the wonderful lawyer or the very well adjusted person that you would have probably wanted or preferred. So that's one of the saddest scenes in the movie. All in all, as a whole, I would say that this, if you want to see another movie, if you're interested in watching something similar, look for A Better Place. I think the movie was released 19, oh gosh, 1997. Look for it. It's with one of the protagonists, Eon Bailey. Kevin Smith is a producer. You'll find it with just those names. Look it up, and it lacks the extraordinary, literally, aspect that Donnie Darko has. So you're not gonna see anything out of the ordinary in that regard of like having an out of body experience, like I mentioned earlier. But it does have the realism and the straightforward um dread of being alive theme, which is kind of comforting, weirdly enough. Like, and I've seen it in the comments of that particular movie because I obviously reviewed it. I'll leave a thumbnail in the end. And this guy was like, it's my favorite movie. I watch it every time it's my birthday. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, weirdly you think that something so dark and like of that nature, it wouldn't be comforting, but it is. It's like it warms my heart, that's for sure. And this one does so the same way. So if you'd like to check out something similar, back to this movie. um so amazing, so amazing, so many layers, literally layer on top of layer. And like I mentioned it earlier, but I really appreciate that this film doesn't just go into the guessing game, because a lot of thrillers, they go into and guess who and guess what and guess this and guess that. This one is actually enjoyable. Like, I'm following the story, right? I'm seeing Donnie Darko's progress as a human, and I'm invested in what's going on. Oftentimes we see it that they're like throwing so many curveballs at us and so many mysterious lines and characters, and we can't see the top of their heads or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, that apple was the one that poisoned. It's like, dude, like, I just want to sit down and watch a movie and enjoy it. And this one, if you want to like over analyze it and write a whole essay about it, you can, which is wonderful. But at the same time, if you just want to relax and use common sense and just follow what they're telling you, literally they will tell you what's going on in the movie, then this one also has that. So it has for every taste. I'm not saying that I won't enjoy one or two thrillers like the way I described the earlier right now, but I would much rather prefer to just watch something like this, where it does make you think if you're willing to think, but the message is quite clear, open for interpretation. There are questions, and I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people. If you go on Reddit or whatever, there's going to be a lot of people, no, it's not about this, it's about this, it's about that. And maybe the creators have their own opinion as usual, but this is one of those movies that gift you that ability to decide for yourself what you take from it. And I think the message is rather positive. And I was kind of like thinking, and this might be like a very stupid um how do you say it, observation, but I wondered why Frank gave Donnie the ability to see into the future if he could have just left them sleeping and he would have died there and then everything would be good, quote unquote. But then I guess as I was reading some YouTube comments, they said, look how like generous Frank was to actually allow him, sorry, to fall in love and to see all of these other different sides of life um before he passed away. So I guess it was just him being given the ability to see the alternative of him not dying at that moment, because eventually everybody was going to die according to what Frank said. So um there's a million more things to comment on, but then this would never end. So hopefully the dog barks were not very loud. I had like the mic position more towards this way so it doesn't register too much of that. If it is overwhelmingly loud, then I'm probably not going to post this, and it's going to be very frustrating for me, as it usually is. But I probably won't be able to do a review until some months later, because I like to keep my reviews fresh and not rehearsed and uncut. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. But this movie, rating of 10 out of 10 in its category, amazing. I would recommend it. I've literally lent this copy to a coworker years ago. He loved it. My sister has watched it. She loved it. Like everybody that I talked to that has watched this movie, they love it, unless they're like very they just want their blockbuster, Avengers films or whatever. Then, and no, I'm not like talking smack about, like, I enjoy some superhero movies. That's why I actually just watched Spider-Man like 3 weeks ago. I enjoyed it a lot. Amazing to see the other Peter come back, the other Peters. But yeah, this is a different type of film. This is more serious and more less spectacular in that regard, but more spectacular in the actual, rawness of humanity. And I would recommend it to anyone who wants to reflect on life and who wants to have a good time. And I guess that's it for this one.